Welcome back to the channel. So if you're here from the one other video where we wired in the dump switch or the dump valve, and we did not do the switches because I have 4 switches here and I needed to buy harnesses. Or you might be here because you want to know how to wire in your spare switches on your Peterbilt. You need these wiring harnesses. Now there's 4 of them in here. You only really need one, but I ordered all 4 for all 4 switches so I can plug into my switches. They are not cheap, I will say that. Peterbilt is actually one of the cheaper places that I found it. Otherwise, like online, because the list price on these is 100 and where did I see that? 100 and maybe it doesn't say on this sheet. My receipt says I think I want to say they're $140 a piece. But I bought them for $87 or $88 a piece. If you want to see, here's the part number. You want to get close up on that, if you can kind of read it. I'll put it up on the screen as well. It's P92-6421-1000. It's the wiring harness for your spare switches, $88 a piece. So for 4 of them was $352. Like I said, not cheap, but it's better to do it the right way than to hack the shit out of your wiring. Especially if you plan on keeping the truck for any amount of time, or you just genuinely care about your truck. Just do it the right way. I mean, really, let's be real. I plan on trying to most likely keep this truck the rest of my life, mainly because they don't make 389s anymore. They're the 579s. I think are just terrible looking, and so yeah, I bought one in the last years of the 389s, and especially before they went to the digital dash, because I hate the digital dash. I like the gauges. So, yeah, I won't ever sell this truck. Not saying I won't buy another truck someday to replace this one, but I don't ever plan on selling this truck. So, want to do it right, and not do a shitty job and not hack it all up. I've come from older trucks. I've always had older trucks, and guess what? The wiring's always hacked, and I hate it. It's a freaking nightmare trying to figure anything out. You know, we're just gonna do it right. But we're gonna pull all these things off, obviously, to get out all our gauges and switches here. So what we're gonna do is we want to pull this panel off, obviously, because we want to get to the back of our switches. What I want to do is I want to move my switches around. I'm going to move these 2 here up to here and put all 4 of my spare switches together. And then eventually I got to figure out, I want to remove my def switch that I no longer have. Being that this truck's a glider, put a spare switch in here, and then I actually would somehow want to figure out how to move my auxiliary switch over to here because it's for my lights. And it would be nice to keep all 4 of my lights together, but I'm not doing that today because this has I don't know, like smart switches or something. So I don't know how I can do that. I got to look once we get this apart to see if that has the like connectors where all the switches are hooked together, or if that has a separate harness that's long enough to move the switch over there. But I'd have to get a new panel that's already cut out. But it would be kind of nice, so then I'd have 6 spare switches. Because one's going to be for my dump kit. We're putting an aftermarket aftermarket bag system on the front axle here at some point, but I got my factory one that I'm going to dump. And I want one for that. One for, I want to put dual, when I buy a new trailer here, the next year or so, or whenever I decide to do it, I want to do dual dumps because it's spread axle. So I'd have 2 switches for dumps and then 1 for a lift axle. Well, that'd use up 4 of my switches. And then I eventually want to put a lift bumper on here, so I'll need a spare for that. We'll spare for the dump axle on the front axle. So that's like a minimum of 5 switches that I need. And then I'd still have 1 more spare for lights or whatever I decide to, what else I decide to wire up. So as you can see, There's nothing plugged into these spare switches, which is why we had to buy the harness. You can make your own harness if you want. I didn't because I didn't know what the pins are for. The nice thing is these come completely labeled. And then there's a fuse box behind the gauges here that you can plug it into. Yeah, I decided to make a video on this too because it's not real easy to find information for these out there, surprisingly. Which is kind of crazy to me. But this is for the lamp option, which I don't really know what that's for. Backlit splice block, whatever that means. So I believe this plugs into the harness and this plugs into the switch. I don't know. So I'm going to mess with this for a little bit and do some testing and figure out exactly what does what. And then once I figure it out, we'll be back and explain it. So see you in a minute. Okay, so we figured it all out with the harness. So what you do is you got your fuse box in, is you plug it in one of these little spots right here. Mine already had some in. I put my switch in the number 11 spot. So if you take your kick panel off down there, you got the back side of this. That fuse panel behind your gauges is this one here. So mine is in number 11. These are the ones that were already used. So 4, 5, and 6, and then 12 were used. I have no idea what RDA means. Or ACL. Oh, air cleaner lights for them. RDA, I don't know what that means. Yeah, I don't know. And then a fuel filter. So you can see the top row is switch power, so them activate with your key switch. And then the other ones, the lower ones, are battery power. So now if I flip my switch, I don't have to have the key on for it to work. And then you plug that in, and then you plug your switch in, right? Some of these are looped around. I can show you a little more here in a minute. But then you have this wire, which I still have no idea what it does. It says backlit splice block, but it doesn't do anything. There's no power to it, so I'm going to be honest, I have no idea what this is for. Wait, before you get too far, I screwed up. So these wires, the brown wires that I did not know what they were for, turns out those are for your backlighting. Notice how only the one switch lights up? It's because I figured out where these go. These three don't light up yet because they're not hooked up. That brown wire is what makes these light up. So what you're going to do is you're going to go down behind your gauges or down in the lower dash, and you're going to look for one of these things. They look like this, right? You're going to look for the one that's labeled backlighting. And we can get it a bit here. Backlighting splice block. I took off this black cap. That's which is why this here is exposed. And then you take out this little blue section, which, let's see if I can get a look at this one. Take out that blue section, and then you can push in your wires, and then you have backlighting. Now mine doesn't have enough spots. Mine's only got, oh, I guess mine does have enough spots. I'm not going to edit out all of it in the rest of the video, so you might hear me talk more later in the video about not knowing what to do with that wire. That is your backlighting wire for your switches. So make sure you hook it up. You have to find that splice block behind your dash. There is no information about this on the internet that I can find. Like, I find like pieces of videos, but it's very hard to find information on this stuff for some reason. So this I actually had to find out myself, just trying to find something to hook up to, and I came across that I thought looked weird, so I looked, grabbed it, and here it turns out splice block. So yeah, you'll probably hear me talk about it later in the video in other parts. You have to hook that up. that's what you're backlighting. Okay, so what I ended up doing, I ended up just plugging them all into this. I had enough room. I think I still technically have one left over. There's not a letter on that one, and I actually cannot get one plug into there. So I don't know. There's a pin in there, but it doesn't. I can't plug into it for some reason. But otherwise, yeah, I had enough. Future, if I have to add, when I add more spare switches, I'll just splice into this if I gotta. And then I just taped everything together. Obviously, because I like my stuff nice and neat. Because then, as you can see, my whole harness is just all taped together, nice and neat. I don't like shit laying everywhere. It just makes it easier to locate stuff in the future. And then, like I said, everything's behind the glove box. So I'm gonna put this in, and I'll show you that it works. I just set everything back in, and now I hit key on. Everything lights up like it's supposed to. And then when you flip the switches, the little light comes on telling you that they're flipped. Since there's nothing hooked to these, they don't light up yet. But yeah, the reason these don't light up yet is there's no fuse in there, because I'm not going to put fuses in them until I wire these up. But then I have everything labeled, and yeah, so I'm glad that's all wired up and working now. Back to the rest of the video. You have your white and yellow wires, which will normally have an end on it like this. If you can get a plug like this and know how to pin these, whatever wires you plug in, your best bet is to literally buy one of these and you can pin it. It would be the cleanest, most professional way. But what I did is we took the wire, here Morgan, take the phone, and then I put these quick connectors styles on so I can still disconnect and connect them anytime that I want, you know. And then I'm going to electrical tape these separate so they don't touch together. But then your yellow wire is your hot wire, and then your white is actually a ground. So then they're pre-grounded through the fuse box, which is super nice. So we didn't have to run a separate ground somewhere. It just makes the wiring a lot cleaner. So then I ran my wire into this, through the firewall into this stuff. So this is what you see underneath the hood. A nice clean 2-wire thing I was ordered on Amazon. Spliced it, put them together so I can still hook and unhook them. But then this one, like I said, doesn't do anything. I have no idea what this one's for. So we're just going to loop it in, tie it in. But now, hit my switch. Air dumps. And the key's off, so I don't have to have the key on to be able to dump the air. Flip it. Airs it back up. If you want to see how we did a dump kit on the factory Peterbilt, I have a video linked, or I'll link a video in the description. How to build your own kit for like 200. Yeah, I'd say 150 to, let's say $100 to $300. Really depends on the parts that you already have. The 2 pilot valves and the solenoid were the most expensive parts. With all 3 of those are about roughly $100 for all 3 of those, and then it just depends at that point what you have for fittings laying around, like quick connects and line hoses, wire, and stuff. If you have a lot of that stuff, you can actually do one of these kits pretty cheap. But that'll be a separate video, obviously. But that's how you wire in a switch. Insanely easy. Also, you have to, when you plug in up here, your switch won't work. I better make sure I say this. You go down to here. So here's all your fuse box up here. These over here. So you have your normal fuse panel down here, which is all these. There's ones next to it that are empty, unless they have things in it already. You have to put a fuse in here in order for this to work. So like my number 11, which is what I have my switch hooked to, there was nothing that was. So if I plugged it in, hit the switch, nothing would work. I got to go down to here, put a fuse in number 11, and then my switch will work. So make sure if you plug into this, you put a fuse in it. Otherwise, it's not going to work. I just put a 20 amp fuse. I figured that's plenty. I feel like that's kind of a safe, thing. I want it to be able to work when I want it to. So I figured a little heavier amp would be decent. My wire's fairly thick, so I went with 20 amp. Might drop it to a 10 or a 15 if I feel like it, but I think a 20 is that kind of happy medium. But I'm gonna hop out and I'm gonna have Morgan hit the switch so you can see what it does when it dumps. But otherwise, I'm going to hook up all my other switches. I'm gonna move some of them around in here, and I'll show you kind of what we do there. And then I'm gonna put them back here. I'm just not gonna put fuses in them. And then all my things will have power, and then I'm just gonna run my lead wires here behind the glove box, so when I go to do this again with my other spare switches, I don't have to pull all this apart. And I just pop the glove box out, figure out which switch is for what, and then, which I might even just label these over behind the glove box for switch 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then I could just pull the glove box out, splice in my wires, and put a fuse in it, and we have a working switch in the future. That's why I bought all 4 at the same time, so I can run all these together, and then I'll tape all 4 wires together, and I'll run them so it's nice, neat, easy to diagnose if I ever have issues. Yeah, just trying to do as clean as possible, and a nice professional job, probably the easiest way to put it. Just like that, she's dumped. All right, flip it again. And that's putting air back in. I'm so excited for that. I've had this truck for like 6 months, and I've wanted to do that for so long. If I would have known it was this cheap, I would have did it sooner. All right, so after a few hours, I finally got everything ran. I mean, this is kind of time consuming. Is actually moving these switches is really kind of a big pain because I don't want to break the backs of them. But I put all my spare switches right here. Obviously, you can see only the ones got a fuse. I'm not going to put a fuse in the other ones until I have stuff to hook up to them. So what I did is I ran them all right next to each other, and then I labeled them 1 through 4 for my spares. So I'll pull this out here a little bit. They're all hooked up, and then I ran everything together. I taped all 4 switches together. So I'm gonna pull this out. I don't have Morgan recording for me today. She's busy, so bear with me here. So what I did was I ran all 4 wires together, taped them, and then you can see they're all together. Ran into the back of the switches, and then I ran all the hots and the grounds together behind the glove box, and then I have them all labeled. So like here's the spare number 4 and fuse number 8. So my 4th switch all the way to the passenger side will be that wire, and then that fuse that it's plugged into is number 8, is how I have it wired. And then I just go in order. So that way when I want to hook up my spare switches, instead of having to pull all this apart, all I have to do is pull the kick panel off, throw a fuse in the one I want, write it on here, pop the glove box out because it's 4 screws, and then I can hook into my spare switches. And then tuck them up behind the glove box, and that's it. Because then you run through the rubber grommet through the firewall on the passenger side right behind the glove box. So like as you can see, this one comes through right here from the firewall. So that way it's just a lot easier in the future to wire up my switches. I don't have to keep pulling the dash apart. I'm only planning on pulling the dash apart hopefully 1 or 2 more times because I want to put aluminum dash panels in here and paint them. And then I'm gonna add 3 holes for 3 more gauges, and then I will probably add a few more spare switches because I have, let's see, I have 3 more key-on spots and 1 more full-time spot and behind the dash for wiring these. I don't know what I'm gonna put in them yet. The nice thing is if you really wanted to, you probably could splice in to these wires and jump into another switch if you wanted, because what I'm going to end up doing here, hang on one second, I'll put the dash back in. So what I'm going to end up trying to do is I'm going to try to move this auxiliary switch when I get new dash panels over, let's see if I can get this to sit there, to here, because there's a blank spot right here. So I want to get a new dash panel, have this cut out. So all 4 of my light switches together. If I want to add 2 more, I might even take these ones out and move like this one over to here if I can, if the wires are long enough, so that that one's kind of out of the way. This is my old DPS switch, like I said, truck's a glider, so this is useless. And then I could have another spare switch over here, so then I'd have a total of, well, I said it earlier in the video, I think 6 switches. So I'd add 1 more spare here. And then I'll actually have 2 more spares over here, because then I put the dimmer switch here, and then I got my engine fan, my Jake brake, the Jake brake, cruise, and then actually I would have 1 more spare over here because I would move this one here. So
yeah, we'll see what we end up doing exactly. As far as that, but yeah, that'll be a totally different video when we get new dash panels and stuff and get some more things cut out. I'd like to move a few more things around, and try to keep most of my spare switches together. I really like to group things together. One other day I ended up moving all my gauges around because these were all just everywhere. Like, they were not organized at all. So like now I have my clock and my 2 electrical gauges, so my amps and volts, and then my brake pressure, so my 2 air tanks plus brake, when you hit the brake, your applied pressure, I guess, fuel, and then oil pressure. So I got the fuel gauge for oil pressure, and then I got my boost and pyrometer, and then my trans, rear and front axle, suspension load, and then all my temps are right here with my oil and coolant, and then my restriction gauges for the air filter and oil filter together. I try to group everything just to make it look a little bit nicer. I would like to add 3 more gauges. I don't know exactly what I'm going to put in there. I would like to put one for the front axle air pressure. And I don't know what I would do with the other ones. I'd probably just put blank ones in it for now until I decided to, but I would like a full gauge package in this truck. I'm 3 gauges shy. So, yeah, slowly but surely getting it set up. But I'd like to add a couple more spare switches and run the harnesses back in the glove box again. So that way I can wire them up easily in the future. So, pretty simple. And then we're just going to hook up my 2 wires that are from my spare switch number 1. Put them in there, tape these so they're separate so they don't touch together. And then I'm going to coil everything up behind the glove box, throw everything back together, and it's done. Nice and clean. Like I said, this is the only switch that lights up because that's the only one that's got a fuse. So, nice and simple. I don't know why there's not a lot of information out there on this stuff. Because I couldn't really find nothing trying to figure out how to get these switches to work. I was trying to figure out what the wires were for and stuff. I was going to show you. I'm going to be honest, just order the harness. It's so much easier instead of making a cobbled mess out of it and whatnot. So it's kind of hard to show you how the harness runs too. If you want, buy a harness, figure out how to run your wires, take the harness back if you really wanted to not spend the money on it. But yeah, I put the part number earlier in the video. I'll drop it down in the description for the part number for the harness. Like I said, I couldn't find it online. Luckily, Barry Trucking had a video that he mentioned it in one video, and he kind of briefly talked about how to do it. Other than that, I couldn't find a frickin' thing. So, there is a harness for them. Kind of spendy. Super easy to hook up once you do it. I promise it's worth the money. I'm glad I spent it. It sucks, but I'm glad I spent the money because now it made my life a lot easier and it's a lot neater behind the dash. So, if you guys like the video and you want to see more Peterbilt content, we're going to be doing a lot more to this truck throughout the year, in years I should say. Even within the next 2 weeks, not this next weekend, but the following weekend, we have 3 big things. Actually, 2 big things that we're going to be doing to it. I don't know if I'll put them all in one video or not. I'd probably try to make the video separate. But should be pretty cool. Got lots of plans for this truck. Like I said, I plan on keeping this truck probably for the rest of my life. So it's going to get redone a few times in its lifetime. So we're going to keep building it until I get it to version 1 how I want this truck. And if you guys want to follow along, make sure you hit that subscribe button. And trying to keep supporting me. Keep me motivated to keep making these videos for you guys. So with that being said, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.